Welcome to Sikbaggers YouTube channel. I'm Steve, and the first thing I want to do is kind of apologize to a lot of my subscribers. I haven't shot a video in the last probably 3 weeks because we have been covered up here in the shop. We pretty much still are. The only reason I'm getting a chance to shoot a video today is because they have a 2022 Road Glide special over there that all of the tins went out to paint, and they were supposed to be back Sunday night or Monday, and here it is Tuesday, and I still don't have them. So I pushed it off the lift. Back here on the lift, we got the 2015 Road Glide. We're getting ready to get this thing ready for Sturgis, and I know I need brakes on it. So we're gonna do that today. There's a couple of things I wanna cover just real quick before we jump into the brake change. Make sure that you get a service manual for your bike. This is a 2015, and I'm pretty sure on these brakes that these go from 08 up to 22. They're probably going to be the same. Just thinking back at the different ones that I did, pretty sure they are. But the biggest thing is, if you're going to do any wrenching on your bike, get yourself a service manual, not an owner's manual. That's different. That's the little book that comes with the bike and just kind of tells you about the bike. Service manual is going to have all of the goodies in it that you need, especially the torque specs. It's going to tell you how to take stuff off step by step and how to put it on step by step, and it's going to give you the torque values to all of the bolts along the way. You can jump online and find a PDF that you can download. They're usually free. For the 21, 22s are still a little bit tough to get to, but you can purchase one pretty much just about anywhere. I know Fleabay has a bunch of them for like 25 bucks, and it's well worth the money. If you have a newer bike and you want that service manual and you got to spend 25 bucks on a PDF, you better get it, because all of that stuff is very important to do. We try to cover everything in these videos, including the torque specs, which will give you the torque specs for this model, but it may be a little bit different for yours. So it's very important that you look up your torque specs for your bike. In that service manual, all the way at the bottom of that PDF, you'll have service intervals. And if you look at that 5,000 mile mark, there's a lot of things that you can check out. So one of the biggest things is changing your oil at 5,000 miles, right? So you got all your tools out, you're changing your oil. This is a great time to inspect your brake pads. Just a ratchet and a couple of sockets. You can have your front brakes off to inspect. You can have your rear brakes off to inspect. Said, I don't really mess around with brakes. So, I mean, that's how you get the bike to stop. So we really need to pay a little bit more attention to our brake pads. So let's get the camera over here and let's get to work. Now I've got the stretch side cover off and the right side saddlebag off, and here's our caliper. And I'll move the camera here in just a second and get right down on it so you can see what I'm doing. But there's one thing I want to touch on real quick. The brake pads that are on here are thinner, right? So when you take those off and you put the thicker pads back on, it's going to be hard to put over the caliper. So we have to get a big screwdriver in there and wiggle it back and forth. We basically have to reopen that caliper. We have to push the pistons back in so we have more room to slide it back on there. The service manual does tell us to go to the rear master cylinder and take the cover off of it, wrap some towels around it. You don't want that brake fluid getting on anything, but go ahead and wrap some towels around it, put some tape around it, whatever you need to do. But when you're putting the screwdriver back in there and you're wiggling that back open, it's going to push some fluid back up. Now, over the years, because I've just done so many of these brake jobs, I find that I can generally just push them back open without taking the caps off. But up here is your rear master cylinder cover. If I zoom out, you can see there's our floorboard, our right floorboard straight in from there. You've got the rear master cylinder cover. It is just 2 Phillips head screws, and you can pull this cover off. Now, in order to get the caliper off this arm right here, we have a bolt here, we have a bolt here. Now, after you get these 2 bolts pulled out, you're gonna lift up on the caliper. Be careful when you're lifting it up that you don't smack your wheel. It's gonna be a 5/16 Allen. If you follow the brake line back, you'll see right here on the swing arm that there's a little clip that holds that brake line. You can go ahead and push that down with your finger, open that up, and that's going to release that line so you got more room to play. When we get the caliper off, like I said, you're just going to lift it straight up. Be careful that you don't smack your wheel. You're going to tilt it towards you. We're going to lift up and pull out. So what I'm going to do from here is inspect my rotor. We're going to be looking for gouges, scratches, chips, anything. Rocks can get in there. I've seen crazy stuff happen to these things. Wore the brake pads down way too far, the rivets start eating into the rotor. So that's what we're doing here. Once you give it a full cycle and you're confident that your rotor is in good shape, it's not warped, everything looks good, now we can move on to the caliper. Now from here, this is where I'm going to go ahead and push my pistons back in. So this next part is very important. You need to pay attention to this. If you're ever doing work on your motorcycle and you've taken your rear caliper off or you've taken your front calipers off, either one or both, don't ever hit your brakes. If you hit your brakes and these pistons push all the way out, then this is pretty much roached. It gets to a certain point in here where you cannot push them back in. You absolutely have to rebuild the caliper, which ends up costing a lot of money. Set yourself a reminder by taking a blue piece of painter's tape and putting it on your brake pedal. Put one up on your handbrake, so that reminds you that if you're doing something else, you make sure that oh, that blue tape's there. I'm not supposed to push on that. Do something. Put a bag around it, something. Just set a reminder, because if you push that all the way down and you push those pistons out, you're gonna have a bad day, I promise you. So from here, this is where you can take the cap off of your rear master cylinder or your front master cylinder, depending on which one you're doing, to allow this fluid to push back through. Generally, like I said, I've done 1,000 of these, and I just don't take the cap off. I just take a big flathead screwdriver. We're gonna get in here and we're gonna push. You can see right here that our pistons are pushed out. We want to make sure that they're pushed back in to allow for more room. So we're just going to put this in and just use it like a pry bar, and we're going to push those back over. You got them on both sides, so you got to make sure that you get them on both sides. So you'll notice that once you get these pushed over, these are loose, but you can't get them out. You need to flip the cover over, and right here you're gonna have a little pin. This little kind of diamond shaped pin right here, I just put a little hook under it and pull it up and out because I don't have fingernails. But that's what the pin looks like, just like that. We're gonna set that off to the side. You can see the 3 remaining bolts on here. This one smaller bolt right here is the one that we wanna remove. Pull that out, and we're gonna set that to the side. Now we can flip this back over, just like this. We can push these pads in towards the middle. We can just simply pull these out. Now if you notice on the back side right here, this piece of metal, these 2 little pieces of metal here and this piece here, that's just a little spring clip that sets down in that caliper. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take some brake clean. We're gonna get in here and just spray this up, clean this up real good. If this little spring clip thing pops out on you, look at the orientation of my caliper. I've got the brake line up here. You got that fat end, and then you got that little double end. The double end is gonna go down. And if you look on the back of this clip, you've got 2 little clip things here. That's gonna clip to that center right there. You're gonna have to turn this sideways, put it in, and then push it down and click it on, and it's back on. So inside the kit from Harley Davidson, you're gonna see that we have several different things aside from just having our 2 rear brake pads. We are going to have a template kit. We're gonna have some anti-squeaky juice, which is what I call it, inside this little tube. You will have a new pad retaining clip and a pad pin. That's for that spring assembly that we talked about earlier, a little pin that we pulled out. That needs to be replaced when you change your brake pads. If you get if you get an aftermarket set and you don't get this stuff, that's part number 41852-08B-SUBA. That's a sub-assembly, that's why it has that SUBA. So you can purchase this separately if you're wanting to run different brake pads than the Harley Davidson ones. So the first thing we're gonna do is flip our brake pads over so we can see the copper side here. We're gonna take one of these templates. This is a sticker. You're gonna orientate this top with the hole, of course. We're gonna peel the back on this. If I can peel it without fingernails. It's just like a sticker, it's just temporary, but we're gonna peel that back. We're gonna orientate that tab with that hole there. Once everything's lined up, we're just gonna press it on just like that. This is where your anti-squeaky juice is gonna go, and this, when you peel this template off, is gonna go right onto the 2 pistons. So we're gonna do the same thing on this side. Gonna peel that, gonna orientate it on that hole at the top. Lay it on there. Doesn't have to be completely perfect. This isn't a science. This just gives you a little template to put this stuff on with. We're gonna take our anti-squeaky juice. As you can see in here, you don't get a ton with it. Harley Davidson kind of overdid it with the tube size. I think could have done a very small tube for this, but we're just going to apply a few drops in that open hole. You're going to have plenty, so don't worry about it. So from there, we're just going to take our finger and we're going to try and spread that throughout those open holes. Like I said, you really do get plenty of this. Now once you get it all filled in like that, you're going to take your little plastic card that comes with it, and we're just going to scrape gently over the top. We're just a little shy right in here. I like to have an even coat. You really kind of want it built up to the edge of the template and not just covering it. So you can see we got a little left over there. So before I clean that up, I'm gonna go ahead and smear these in. And make sure we get it all filled in. And we just simply take this template and we peel it off. Just set those off to the side. So you want to take a look at your caliper. Remember the pin that we pulled out. It's going to have to go through that. So you want to make sure that you orientate these down where that pin goes with the brake pad in towards the rotor. So you need to put these in the right way. And that just tells me that this one needs to slide in this way. So we're going to slide this in a little bit of an angle and put it right up against those pistons. We're going to take the other side. We're going to slide it in just like that. And you can kind of push those into place with your fingers. We're going to make sure that those tabs are lined up in here. We're going to take our new pin and we're going to start it through, making sure that we go through both of those brake pads. If it's a little bit off, you just use your thumb to kind of push the brake pads around until you can see it come through on the other side. We're just going to go ahead and start this right now. We'll actually torque it once we get it on the bike. It's a heck of a lot easier to torque it when everything's installed. We're going to take our new pad clip, goes on the side where you put the bolt in. You'll see a little groove in that bolt. I'm trying to get this in the camera. This is our old pad pin. And you can see that groove right there. That's where that little clip goes. When we slide that down in there, that goes around like that. This is the bolt head side, and if you look right down in that hole, you'll see that groove. That's where our pin goes. So you're just going to slide that in just like that. It just clicks on just like that. It's very simple. It's just an extra little safety pin that goes on there. Now we go back up here to the bike. We're going to roll this over. Remember, we had to roll this out, so we got to roll it back in. So we're going to roll it in, start pushing it down into place. You can see our holes line up here, here, and here. We're going to take our bottom bolt. We're going to raise it up and get it started. Take our front bolt, we're going to put it through, pick up just a little bit, we're going to get it started. So the torque values on this pin is 75 to 102 inch-pounds. We're going to set our ratchet to right around 90 pounds. Should be plenty to hold that in. We're going to turn this till we hear the click. Right there, one ugga-dugga. Not click, 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 3 ugga-duggas, 1 ugga-dugga. When it clicks, stop. These two bolts right here are 43 to 48 foot-pounds. So we're going to set our torque wrench to about 45. Same thing, 1 ugga-dugga. Now the rear brakes are done, and let's move up to the front. Now we're going to move on to the front calipers, and it's going to be the same thing for both sides of the bike. And once again, we'll cover talking about taking the cap off of your master cylinder up there on your handlebar. It's going to be the same thing as the rear, except your rear's down here at the bottom and your other one's up here on the perch. So once again, I usually don't open that at all. There's enough space in there to allow that fluid to push back up and come back down. So I don't usually take any out. I don't take the cap off. You can if you want to, but I've never done it before and it works just fine. Now you have 2 bolts, one here and one here. Now if you have ABS, you'll have a wheel speed sensor here as well. It'll go between here and here, but that black plate right there, where that's going to be a wheel speed sensor, and you need to look at how that is on there and make sure that you put it back on there in the same way. Once again, doing ABS or non-ABS is not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a difference. You just have different sensors on the ABS that the non-ABS like this don't have. The most important thing to note about these 2 bolts is the way that they look. This is a 12-point bolt. It's not a normal bolt. So if you take a normal socket and put on there, you're going to end up stripping this out and having a bad day. If you get this into focus here and you look at the end of that, you see all of those points in there. That's a 12-point socket. And this is going to be a 10 millimeter. Make sure that you use a 12-point socket. You don't have to buy this individually. You can, of course, because there's not really too many other 12-point bolts on the bike. But you can usually, if you get any kind of decent ratchet set or socket set, that usually comes with a set of 12 points in it. And I'll link all the tools that I've been using today down in the description. Links over to Amazon. You don't have to get it from Amazon, but at least you can click on it and go over there and look and see what they are. Maybe bookmark it and pick it up wherever you want to pick it up. But if you have an ABS system, you'll have an extra wire that comes off that sensor and goes up your brake line. You'll have zip ties. Now mine, I have zip ties for the LED lighting that I have inside the front wheel. So we're just going to cut those. But if you have ABS, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to want ahead and cut those zip ties. We're going to go ahead and bust these 2 down. This is a 10 millimeter 12-point socket once again. Pull the bottom one out. When we do the top one, we're just going to hang on to it. Be careful that you're not smacking your wheel, not hitting your fender. But you're going to pull this off, turn it around just like that. And just like the rear, we're going to go ahead and take our screwdriver. We're going to put it in here and we're going to pry those pistons back into the caliper. Once we get the pistons collapsed all the way, we're going to flip this over on the back side. On the other side, you've got your dust cover. And you got 2 indentions on this side, 1 indentation on this end. Take a little screwdriver, or if you got good thumbnail, you can get in there with that, which I don't, but we're gonna push in right in the middle, push that in and just pop that off. And I'll show you what it looks like on the other side. But you can see right here, this little thing, that's all I did was just push that in and rotate it and pop it off. It's just got 2 on the other end. So this is kind of the same as the rear. Maybe you skip the rear and you're just doing the front, but you have a pin clip right here. We're just going to get underneath that pin clip and pull that off. You're supposed to replace that. And then you've got the pin that goes through the brake pads and through the caliper. It screws in right here. We're going to change this over to a 5 Allen. We're going to put that in, break that loose, pull that pin out. We're going to go ahead and pull the pin, and now our brake pads are loose, so we can move that to the center of the caliper and rotate it out. Same thing on this one. Move it to the center, rotate it out. A little brake clean all in there. Get this stuff cleaned up. If you skip the rear part, it's very important to note, I'm going to cover it one more time because it's that important. When you have the calipers off like this, do not, for any reason, ever hit your brakes. Do not pull the brake lever. Do not hit the brake lever, the foot for the rear, when the calipers are off. Without a rotor in here, these pistons will shoot out to a point where they won't compress back in. Then you're going to find yourself having a really bad day because you basically have to rebuild the entire caliper. It's not as easy as just sticking something in there and pushing them back in. They get to a point where they don't go back in. On the front kit, you are going to get your brake pads, of course. It's not as detailed as the rear. You don't get the anti-squeaky juice that we put on back there, but you will get a new pin and you will get a new pin clip. So if you've bought EBC brakes or something like that and you need a new pin and a new pin clip, it is part 41854-08-SUB because that's a sub-assembly part. So it has that SUB at the end. I'll put that up there if you want to read it and pause the video. So if you got the spring clip that's in here, just like the rear, let's say that came out. I'm going to cover it on the front too, just in case you skip the rear. But you do have this spring clip that's inside there, and maybe while you were cleaning it, this thing came out and you're wondering how to put it back together. It's very easy. Inside the caliper, there's a little metal bar that goes across there. This little clip and this little clip just snap on there. That's all they do. Just make sure you have it in the right orientation. So the big fat end goes towards the top of the caliper nearest the brake lines. So look at the orientation of my caliper. Here's our brake line. Roll it over, our big fat end goes up. It's easier to get in if you turn it sideways and then roll it into place, because you got to get around those pistons. So you want to rotate it into position all the way down on that metal bar inside there. Make sure that you're not on the pistons. And then you just push it down until you hear it snap. Then we're going to take our brake pad. We're going to orientate the brake pad, of course, with the brake on closest to the rotor, but this hole up here where that pin went through has to be lined up with that hole there. So it only goes in one way. You want to kind of rotate it in like that. You're going to push down on it, push it over until it clicks in underneath these little tabs right here, and it'll pretty much stay where it needs to go. This side, the pin is down here, so we're putting the hole down. We're going to rotate it in. And we're just going to kind of hold it there with our thumbs. And we're going to roll it over. And I forgot to open my bag of parts, so I'm going to get our pin out. We're going to drop that pin through, making sure that it goes through both of the holes in the pads and is underneath these little springs right here. So we know that that's in. We're going to go ahead and just get it threaded. We're not going to worry about torquing it until it's on the bike. Going to get our new spring clip. So once we have our bolt in, we're going to look for that little groove. We're going to turn those prongs to face outwards. And we're just going to put the clip in just like that. There's really nothing to it. So from there, we're going to take our screen. Remember, it has the 2 clips at the bottom, 1 clip at the top. 2 clips go down at the bottom. Single clip goes to the top. So we're just going to slide that in and push it on. We're going to slide this in, get it over the rotor, pull it up into place and get our bolt started. Remember, if you have ABS, you have that little sensor right here that goes between this bolt and this bolt. Just make sure that you get that back in there as well. So it's 28 to 38 foot-pounds on both of those bolts. 1 click. One ugga-dugga. Not 2, not 3. 1. Put your zip ties back on your line, whether you have LED lights like I do or you have the ABS with the wheel sensor line. Go ahead and zip tie that back off to your brake line, and that side is done. All we have to do is repeat this same process on the other side. So we're going to drag the camera over there, but it's exactly the same. So I'm going to show you, but I'm just going to speed the video up just a little bit just to save a little bit of time. And then we'll talk about a few things at the end of the video. Now the very next thing we want to do is push our pistons back out and get those calipers onto the rotors. Right now they're spread way apart so we can get them on. So make sure this part is very, very important. Do not change your brakes and then take off down the road, because you're not going to have any brakes the first 2 or 3 times you pump this. When I pull this lever in, you'll see this thing come all the way to the grip. And as I keep pulling and pushing that fluid back down and pushing those pistons out, this is going to get tighter and tighter. So the first time you pull the brakes, none. Look at that. So that's why that's very important. Absolutely no brake right there, all the way to the grip. So we're gonna let that go. Right now, we're just pushing that fluid back down and we're pushing those pistons out. And you can see now, I can't even get it. I'm squeezing as hard as I can, can't get it to the grip. So very important that you do that to the front and to the rear. This one, now we're gonna do the rear. All the way down, no brakes. Now see, now we're barely moving at all. The next thing you wanna do is get your bike put back together and get it outside and do a slow roll test. Do not jam it first and rip off out of there hoping that your brakes work. So it's very important, just go ahead and put the bike in neutral, go ahead and let it roll forward, stop it with the front brake, stop it with the rear brake. And just like that, you just saved yourself a bunch of money. Absolutely zero need to take your bike into a shop to have the brakes changed. You just saw with a couple just little tools that most people have laying around. Like I said, if you don't have the torque wrenches, you don't have to go out and spend 300 bucks on a torque wrench. I see that all the time. You know, oh, what are you torquing that with a $50 torque wrench? Because it works, that's why. I'm not using my torque wrench 800 times a day. If you are, and I would highly suggest that you get a Snap-on or whatever big name brand, big lifetime warranty torque wrench. Outside of that, if you're just doing this stuff at home, pick yourself up a $30, $40 torque wrench set. You want to get an inch-pound torque wrench and a foot-pound torque wrench. Make sure you get your service manual. The service manual tells us to inspect the brake pads, the whole brake system every 5,000 miles. So it's a good thing to do when you're changing your oil, because your oil on these is suggested every 5,000 miles for the engine oil. So while you got your tools out changing your oil, take your 10mm 12-point socket, pop your calipers off, look at your brake rotors, look at your pads, and pop them back on. It's pretty easy to do. It only takes a couple of minutes. Like, I don't jack around with brakes, and a lot of people don't put a lot of thought into the brake system. It's just one of those things that I see people kind of let go. I'll get bikes in here to work on, and I'll ask them straight out, like, when's the last time you looked at your brake pads? Well, it's the same brake pads that came on the bike. You need to pop them off and give them a look at. But you know, once your brakes start going and those rivets that hold those pads onto the plates, those things will start cutting into your rotors when you're applying your brakes. Now you've cut into your rotors, which gets pretty expensive. Rotors are not cheap, and those rotor bolts that hold those rotors on, those are one-time bolts. So once you pull those bolts out, those go in the trash. So now you're buying new rotor bolts and you're buying new rotors. So over a $30, $35 set of brake pads. So it's very important that you keep up on your brakes. Hopefully this video helped you and actually saved you some money, because that's what we're all about here, doing some videos so you can do this stuff at home. Like I said, all the tools that I use today will be in the link down in the description to take you over to Amazon. You don't have to buy it there, but just gives you an idea. Maybe you can bookmark it and get it somewhere else. But if you have any questions at all on any of this, make sure to leave a comment section down below. I'll try to help you the best that I can. I'm gonna get out of here and get myself cleaned up a little bit, eat some lunch, and start the next project. I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, as always, be safe, keep your knees in the breeze. Thanks for checking out the video. Don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe popping up over here. And don't forget to check out the rest of the channel, because we have a ton of bagger related and soft tail videos on our channel. And to get you started, maybe you can check out this one or this one. I'm not really gonna say anything else. You can just click one of those and take you over to another video.